Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, we do now have full specs of the Bitmain Antminer E11. We have pricing, complete specs, release windows, everything. So now we can truly do a good comparison to the other units to see how this thing stacks up and if it's going to be worthwhile. Okay, so if that sounds good guys, stay tuned. Let's get right to this thing. So let's go right to it. So a little bit disappointing on the hash rate. Ideally, we were hoping, like best case scenario was that 15 gigahash. Our prediction was that it wasn't going to come in as efficient as the others, but have a better bang to the buck. And that is kind of what happened here, which again, I wanted to be wrong though. I wanted it to be somewhere close around the Apollo efficiency, but unfortunately we didn't get it. So let's go over it. 9 gigahash, 9,000 megahash, 2340 watts, 0.26 joules to megahash. A little disappointing on this front also. We were saying that we wanted it better than the Jazz miner efficiency, right? But realistically, my threshold would have been somewhat like the Bombax unit, right? Ideally, wouldn't want anything worse than the Bombax unit, and it is. Okay, so it's within 20% though, so it's not a full deal breaker. What is promising though, and this is kind of where our guess was, is that it is going to kind of reprice the market a bit. Okay, so it's down to $5,000 a unit after coupons, which again, the coupons are what they give for those little giveaways. There are marketplaces for them, and as we've seen, this is kind of the real MSRP, right? So typically resellers will be anywhere from 10 to 15% over that price, so expect street price to be somewhere around 5,500 to 6,000. This thing is shipping now. It's shipping in 7 working days, so availability will be here soon. Sales are starting here in a few minutes on the Bitmain website, but again, I would highly recommend going through your favorite reseller, right? Mine's personally ETHASH. Up to you to determine where, as typically they just have the better prices, okay? Do have links in the description if you guys are interested. But now let's get to what we really want to see, right? Or actually, let's get to some more specs. Did a little bit more digging, and this is where it gets a little bit more disappointing. So it is now listed on their website. My curiosity was going to be the amount of RAM. Initially, the expectation would be that they wouldn't go below the E9 Pro. They freaking did, which to me is a huge mistake. So we have it confirmed here. The memory is going to be 5.62 gigs. Okay, which again, the reason we're concerned with this is that you're not going to be able to mine ETH with this thing. Okay, so that was kind of one of the advantages with the E9 Pro, for example, or the Jazz miners, is that it does have enough memory to mine those. Now this one will not be able to alongside the iPolos, which is kind of disappointing, as well as the Bombax units, right? They're all within this range, which is kind of interesting that they're unable to go beyond this range. Okay, but for whatever reason, that's what it is, right? So very disappointing on that front. Another interesting thing to note on the picture, and sometimes they're just stock pictures, right? So we want to go through the description. Look at the power supply. It is the older style power supply. What does that kind of tell you? This thing was probably made a while back and is just now getting released. Maybe they just refurbished them and they're coming out now. Who knows, but typically we know all the newer units, they all have that new style power supply. Okay, another interesting thing is the lack of fans on the back, but to me that's kind of the bigger standout. Kind of makes you put that tinfoil hat on. And then the description does confirm it. The AC input is the 2 wires, 10 amps per wire, confirming that it's the older power supply and not just an old generic stock picture. Right, so just some interesting things to note there. Now let's look at profitability. Shout out to Mining Now, they do have it up there now. So they do have 2 variants listed. They have a 9 and a 9 gigahash, 9.5 gigahash model. Same efficiency, again, it's just different binning. So daily revenue would be about $12.50. Profit at a 10-cent kilowatt hour, about $6.61. So let's give our thoughts here, right? So when I personally look at calculations, when I look at whether or not I'm considering getting this thing, I kind of try to look at more worst case scenario things, right? So if I'm going to calculate the ROI potential on this unit, I'm going to look at potentially the more stable coin, right? Obviously, as you guys know, I'm much more bullish on Octa. The goal here would be to swap into Octa, whatever's more profitable. But Okta also is much higher risk. Yes, there's a lot more potential reward if it does what we think it will do, but it also may not, right? May flop. So if shit hits the fan, what are we going to be on? ETC. So you would yield about 0.46 for easy math purposes. Let's call it half an ETC. Let's look at ETC's potential here for these next 10 months. Okay, so as we look at the charts, currently about 26 bucks. And the reason we are saying ETC is the more stable bet is just because it's a much larger coin. There's a lot of volume, a lot of liquidity. Ranked number 34 by market cap, $4 billion market cap currently. So big, big coin. As we look at the all-time chart, as we look at the price, again, we're currently at 26 bucks. The high last cycle, and this is one of those coins that only peaked on the first bump. Okay, so it only peaked on that May bump. It went up to $118. On the second bump, it was in the $50 range. Okay, so we're currently at 26. I think on a bearish scenario, borderline bearish scenario, let's call it 50 bucks, right? Do I think it's going to do better than that? I'm pretty sure. When we're doing these quick little price predictions, again, it's more of a worst case scenario thing. One thing to factor why I wouldn't be so 100% like, oh yeah, it's definitely going to beat this previous all-time high. One of the big reasons people really got into this thing was why? Ethereum was mega popular last cycle, and this was a big hit with the newbies, right? So think this thing was available on Robinhood, Coinbase, all the easy apps, and when people would look at the price of ETH and then see Ethereum Classic and this thing was much cheaper, that was a big part of the reason people bought this thing. Okay, considering how ETH is doing right now, may not be the case, right? People all over Solana, so we'll see. I think Ethereum will have its day, but this may not be such a huge thing because again, Robinhood only had a few coins then. A lot of the exchanges in general, right? So it's kind of a different story this time, right? So will it, won't it? We don't know, but I think even if it just rides the wave of the bull market, $50 I think is definitely attainable. So the reason we're kind of saying $50 is that we're trying to see if we mine and hodl with this thing, kind of giving us a price target, right? So currently as is, you're yielding about half an ETC a day. So let's call it, you yield about 15. We're saying it's going to be about 50, so about 750 a month. Multiply that by the 9 months, which brings us into October. Peak will be somewhere around October, November, be about 6,750 bucks. Okay, this is kind of more on the worst case scenario front. Hopefully ETC does better, or if we are swapping some into Okta, chances are Okta will almost definitely outperform. It would be hard to imagine Okta not at least doing a 3x from where it's at, but to each your own on that front. Again, we're kind of doing more worst case scenarios here. But even on the worst case scenario front, it's not looking too bad depending on your individual goals, right? So for me, the time to take advantage for profit taking for this cycle has passed. Anything I'm looking at purchasing now is to look beyond this cycle, right? So that doesn't necessarily mean that I 100% won't be buying anything. It just won't be with the intention of maximizing this bull market. How I would maximize this bull market is in order to just pay off the unit essentially these next 9-10 months. So if you're trying to get anything, it's got to be now or the next month or two, realistically, right? So that way, worst case scenario, you're at least able to pay off the unit 100% and then just hopefully mine break even or better for the next 1.5, 2 years afterwards. That would be the kind of the goal here. Just because this one, specifically ETHASH ASICs and Script ASICs, those are the two that I have pretty good confidence that will at least be break even or better, potentially even throughout the bear market, regardless of how bad it gets. Okay. So not too bad on that front. Now some more theoreticals that I would factor in here. Big thing, just comparing it to the other units, right? We'll do a quick comparison with the Bombax unit. This guy's 9.5 gigahash, 2470 watts, the E11. The Bombax unit, similar wattage, about 2300 watts. A lot more hash rate though. Okay, so you're at 12,500. Your yield, profitability is obviously going to be up. The difference, again, is the efficiency, 0.18 in comparison to the 0.26, which is a pretty significant difference. The reason that's important for me is, again, I'm looking beyond this bull market. Okay, when things get squirrely in about a year and a half, 2 years from now, efficiency is going to be king because I do not want to have a 2500 watt ASIC mining it at a loss. Break even or better, I'm fine. The more efficient the unit is, the higher the likelihood of that being the case is. Okay, and when there's already units that are a good chunk more efficient, that price to hash needs to be really good. In this case, arguably kind of is. Okay, so there is a difference in efficiency, obviously comparing to the Bombax unit, but this guy is also going to be twice as much. Okay, and this is where we're kind of saying expect the market to potentially reprice. So this is one that kind of becomes more appealing. The downfall for me though is what? Longevity, reliability, durability. I have much more faith in this guy lasting that amount of time versus this guy. Okay, so that's one thing I would have to factor in. Next on the comparison list is the Jasminer X16Q, which is that guy behind us over here. And this was kind of the threshold for efficiency. Like if it was worse than this, it would be absolutely no-go. It is better, but not by much. It's only like about 20% better for an ASIC that came out a few years ago. Okay, which kind of gives a little bit more credence to the fact that this guy is probably a unit that's been around for quite a while in the background. But regardless, again, tinfoil hat stuff. So as we look at it, you would need about what? Just eyeballing easy math, about 5 of these guys to equal that E11. Okay, price wise, that would bring these down to about $1,000 a unit. We know that at home variants will have a premium, so these things arguably comparatively would be like 1,300 or so, which is about where the street price is right now. It's about 1,500-1,600 for these guys. And you're going to have the advantage that it has 8 gigs of RAM versus the 5.6 here. Okay, so this is where it becomes kind of less appealing. Okay, so especially if these guys lower their prices, which now realistically they're probably not going to a whole lot, right? Just because again, the at-home units will usually have a premium. And then this is where it gets a little bit worse. When we compare to the iPolo V2, again, similar hash rate actually. This guy's 10 gigahash versus the 9 over there. It seemed weird that Bitmain wouldn't just get up to that 10 gigahash level just to at least match them. Or be petty and get it up to like 10.1 just to beat them out. But you can see the massive difference in efficiency now. Okay, you're going from 2470 to 1500. Okay, that's about 1,000 watts, which again, when things get squirrely, the only ones that are going to be profitable are going to be the more efficient units. Okay, so the fact that you have quite a few units that are more efficient doesn't bode too well. Okay, the price to hash is good though, so for like now, these next 10 months, this one's arguably going to be better, and chances are it can potentially make more profit and revenue because again, you'd be able to buy 2 of these things, have nearly 20 gigahash in comparison to the 10 gigahash here, right? Especially considering the price points. Okay, so let's continue down the list, and this is where it gets even worse. We compare it to the Jasminer X44Q, which again isn't going to come out until way later, sometime at this rate, probably Q3 of this year. But again, if the mindset is to purchase something with mining beyond this point, kind of got to consider it. Kind of got to factor it in a little bit. At least for comparison's sake, to kind of make it a deal or not a deal. And in this case, 7,800 megahash versus the 9,000 megahash. Pretty damn close, and the difference in efficiency becomes massive here. 780 watts versus the damn near 2,500 watts. So again, when shit hits the fan, this guy is going to be massively more appealing. And the fact that it's pretty close in hash rate, even if it is struggling, even if it isn't, again, 780 watts, won't break the bank to pay out of pocket. 2,500 watts, not going to be fun if it's at a loss, right? At that point, for me, it'd 100% be unplugged, which kind of defeats the purpose of getting this thing for those purposes. Okay? So, another thing to factor in, again, it just annoyed at this thing, at it being only 5.6. Okay, because what do you think is going to happen? ETC's hash rate is just going to continue to go up. Okay, because again, the only ones that are able to mine EW are these Jasminers. Okay, it's gone up. If you look at it since November, it's been about a 50% increase in hash rate. And we know with these new units, it's only going to go up. And because this one's a more profitable unit, they're going to be on here or they're going to be on Octa. Okay, not on ETHW. So again, that's something to factor in, and that's why that becomes a little bit more relevant, especially if other coins also release with that, that DAG size, which is a possibility. Because think about it, if you're a smaller coin, if you up that threshold to 7+ gigs, it's gonna guarantee that the hash rate's not gonna go too crazy. Okay, so that is something that, like, if I were releasing a coin or if a coin were to come out, that would be something to consider there. Okay, so another factor to consider, because again, at this point, if it's gonna be 5-6 grand, again, the other one we're eyeing is what the script ASICs, right? At this point, it just, the profitability is much better. There's still a lot of room. Like, I do definitely see Doge from where it's at least doubling again, so we can kind of apply the same principles here. The other big difference here is the fact that this is the leader in the space, right? We're not a couple of generations behind like with the E9 Pro or the E11. So realistically, would it just make more sense to save those pennies and go with one of these guys? Because it'd be the same thought process here, is to get them. Like, although yes, the price is outrageous now, pretty good chance you're going to be able to make your money back throughout this bull, potentially some profit, and then the hope would be to continue to mine on it beyond that, right? That would need to be the appeal. Because if you're just going in with the mindset like, oh yeah, I'm going to get either this thing or the 11 and mine on it and then sell it October, November, you're kind of just going to, you make a little profit, right? But reality at that point, 100% just buy the coin. Okay, if, again, for me at least, if I'm looking at anything, it's because I need that damn longevity. I need to be able to mine on it for a couple of years for it to make sense, right? Potentially pay it off in this bull and then go from there, which is kind of a weird subject, right? Even including for myself. Like, I had my cutoff, which was back in October, to try to buy something to take advantage of this cycle. And you're going to hear everybody say, oh, it's too late to buy the ASICs. To me, the difference, and what I noticed also last cycle, it's a lot easier to grow and scale and pay off units in the bull market. Okay, if you're a person who's going to mine and hodl, not the worst thing in the world. Like, for example, even with the GPUs, it was much easier to grow in the bull market by reinvesting that revenue and paying off those units and growing than it was in the bear market. It is kind of hard, right? So just something to kind of consider there depending on your strategy and your viewpoint. But if you're a person who's looking at an ASIC purely from the perspective for profitability, you're going to sell to pay the electric every month, kind of a rough time. You'll probably do okay here. You'll at least break even on the miner, and then it's going to be dependent on what happens in the bear, which again, for me, I look at worst case scenario. I'm going to factor in that it's only going to be the most efficient units that are going to make it and potentially break even or better, which, I mean, again, if your goal is to just DC into the market, which is how I view these ASICs, that's why the goal is break even or better. As essentially, to me, it's a better way to DCA. Okay. A good example of why the efficiency matters is even just looking at the E9 Pros currently, right? Even before these new models come in, where we are currently, the E9 Pro at a 10 kilowatt hour is at a loss. Okay, hopefully ETC will pump, Octa will pump, and this is going to change here in the next few months. It should become profitable. But if any of you guys have any of these things, this would definitely be the year to 100% be selling. Obviously, if you sell right now, not going to sell for a whole lot. At this point, you might as well wait for a consistent pump, maybe sometime in March, maybe over the summer, maybe not till Q3 of this year, and that's when you're going to want to sell into something else, right? But again, this is a key reason why, like, efficiency matters. The more efficient the unit is, you're just increasing the likelihood of being able to mine either at a profit or break even or better for a longer period of time, right? And for me, that's the goal, right? ASICs, you need longevity. Mining in general, you want longevity. I just don't want things for this cycle. So to sum it up, this guy, it is interesting. Not saying it's not a no buy. The issue for me is just my style. my style, I like to have the most efficient units. I like to have the better units just because it's going to increase the longevity of that unit. I don't want to have to get this thing and then, yes, the jazz miner comes out, or even worse, a year later, the iPolo comes out with something else that's even more efficient and then definitely wipes it off, right? The goal is not to mine on this thing for only 6 months or 12 months. It's to mine on it ideally at least 2 years. A year and a half, 2 years would be extremely ideal, and that's what would make me consider any ASIC right now, right? Which is why a lot of the others I would not consider, right? And it's just because I don't necessarily see a lot of them, especially the altcoin ASICs, being much profitable after this bull market. Okay, initially maybe the first 5-6 months after, but when shit really hits the fan, probably not, right? So to each their own. This is definitely an aggressive price. Ideally, if it was under, if it was like 3,500, 4,000, just because of the efficiency difference, it would have made a much bigger splash and been like, okay, you know what, it's worth the risk. It's not a bad price for what it is, especially when you consider the competition, right? The easiest comparison would be it's somewhat close to the Easy 100, and the Easy 100 is twice the price, right? So again, the other thing we mentioned in the other video, we want to see if these guys do reprice the market, if they do go down to kind of compete, or if they just stay in their lane, right? Because realistically, people do want efficiency, and people will likely pay the premium for the efficiency, okay? So at least right now, this is going to look somewhat better, but it's just going to be dependent on your own personal strategy, how you view it. Are you a person who's going to sell that electric to pay off, or sell that coin to pay off the electric, or are you going to be a person who mines and hodl like myself? Okay, so it's definitely not an insta buy. It's one that's not on the no buy list for me, at least, just because, again, the longevity. It's one that I would, again, like we mentioned, wait to see if things do reprice a bit. Again, iPolo does have that huge efficiency gain, so they may not. Okay, so tough one to say. But for me, for my checklist, it doesn't meet the majority of it. It is not the most efficient. It is not the most profitable. And even specs-wise, it isn't the best. Again, it would look slightly better if it had more than the 5.62 gigs of RAM. Unfortunately, it doesn't even have that going for it, though. So overall, meh, right? Let me know in the comments, guys. What do you guys think? Is it a kind of a disappointment? Again, I wish it was just a little bit more efficient. I wish it was at least at the Easy 100. If it was at least here, then would probably consider more, right? But it is fairly close. It's just one of those things, right? Gonna have to analyze it, see how the market reacts, and kind of go from there. But let me know in the comments, guys. What do you guys think? Is this an insta buy? Is it kind of on the fence? Is it a disappointment? I know a lot of you guys were throwing crazy hash rate levels, and so to you guys it's going to be extremely disappointing. But let me know in the comments, guys. Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I am out.